Hello and welcome to Ag PhD. I'm Brian Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. I'm really excited because we get to talk about selecting corn and soybean varieties for our farm, and the same lessons will hold true no matter what crop you're looking at on your farm. What are some of the key things that you need to look at to pick the right kind of variety that you need to plant?
Okay, so that is an important conversation, but what I think is even more important is soil testing. And one of the things we want you to look at all the time on your soil test is cation exchange capacity, or CEC for short. We'll tell you why it's so important today.
Well, another thing that's really important is controlling our weight of the week. We'll show you how to do that coming up a little later in the show. But first, here's our farm basics.
Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
During our Farm Basics time today, we're going to talk about something that happens in plants late in the season. It's called cannibalization.
Plants have one job, and that is to make seed so they can continue on. And when plants are running short of something, water, nutrients, sunlight, whatever it is, all they focus on is, I've got to make that seed. And what happens at the end of the season, a lot of times, is we see those plants cannibalize or pull nutrients from everywhere trying to make the seed.
Okay, so what this is really all about is annual plants like corn or soybeans or wheat that we raise on our farm. They take those nutrients from all other parts of the plant, from the root, from the stalk, from the leaves, everywhere, and that gets fed and pumped into that seed. So that's really what we're talking about here today.
Okay, now you can actually see it even early in the season, especially if we're short of nitrogen, phosphorus, or potassium in our plants. What they'll do is they will rob those nutrients from the lower leaves, bring it up to the newer growth, so they don't have to wait till the end of the year. If we're short of N, P, and K, now that doesn't mean there isn't plenty in the soil. There could be, but maybe there's some kind of restriction on root growth. So the roots just can't bring those nutrients in. They'll cannibalize from the lower part of the plant and bring it up. And what happens is we end up with a weakened plant. It's just like you and me. If we don't eat right, we end up being weakened. And then that's a better chance for disease to come in and hurt us. So we worry about that out in our cornfields and other crops, of course, if we see cannibalization happening early in the season.
Well, even late in the season, I do have to worry about this a little bit. We'll just take corn, for example. We're standing in front of a cornfield right now that I am slightly concerned may go down in the fall, is usually what we say as farmers, because that stalk isn't going to hold on to enough nutrients. It didn't get big enough early enough in the season. Okay, so now I've got to monitor that a little bit, and when the grain gets to a certain moisture and maybe even a little wetter than I want, I've got to get out here with the combine just to make sure I don't end up with any corn on the ground.
You know, the highest yielding corn farmers will tell you the same thing other crop farmers will tell you. They'd prefer that crop to be green all the way right up to harvest. Like with corn, for example, they'd love to see a green corn plant with a brown husk and a dry ear. That would be the ideal world, right? If we didn't have to cannibalize it all.
Well, the reason why is then we know that's going to stand there. We know it's going to feed the ear as long as it possibly can. The odds are extremely high. We're going to be able to go harvest that, and we don't have to worry about field loss.
All right, so there's one thing you need to remember today. Plants are cannibals. They will cannibalize parts of the plant trying to make seed if it's an annual plant. Well, one weed we'd love to see cannibalize itself is our weed of the week. Can you identify it?
The buzz on this line is probably the best in 10 years, both in soil and in the plant. Joe, you've been doing this for a while. What's your take?
Well, Don, you take a player like high energy N, 3 forms of nitrogen, plus sulfur and iron with slow release technology, he's making plays all season long.
Oh, look at his numbers. He's getting it done.
But don't forget about in response. This guy's designed for a quick release nitrogen.
It's looking like another championship season for Agro Liquid.
We started utilizing the Dual React system this year. You can adjust your speed and it automatically adjusts your sprayer tips. So you can slow down and you aren't building up huge droplets, or you can speed up and you're not throwing a mist that's drifting.
Hypro, helping you spray better.
Morton is eager to make the building you've always dreamed of a reality. Visit us online at mortonbuildings.com.
Your planter is the single most important piece of equipment on your farm, because without a uniform stand, you can't reach maximum yield. That's why Harvest International set out to design a planter that takes advantage of the newest innovations in planter technology. Built tough for high speed and integrated with the latest precision enhancements, Harvest International planters ensure every seed you plant today puts more in your bin at harvest. Harvest International, planting the future.
Leading the charge in strip tillage for more than a decade, the Soil Warrior brings the future to your farm today.
One of the most important numbers you need to look at on your soil test is called cation exchange capacity, or CEC for short. Today we're going to talk about what that means and how you can use that particular number.
All right, first of all, let's talk about cations. What are cations? Well, they are the opposite of anions. Anions have a negative charge. Cations have a positive charge. Soil itself has a negative charge. So we're talking about all the positively charged nutrients that are going to bind to that negatively charged soil.
What cation exchange capacity really is, the reason why we want you to know this number is it's the holding capacity of your soil. Your soil's ability to hold everything from water to nutrients. This gives you an idea of how much it can hold. What we usually talk about is if your number is above 20, that's very heavy soil. If your number is below 10, that's pretty light soil in our eyes, in our mind. Also, when we see the number down below 5, well, that tells us that's really light soil with low organic matter and a lot of sand. So this cation exchange capacity is just the measurement of three things. It's the type of clay, the amount of clay, and the amount of organic matter in your soil.
Let's talk about it from a nutrient standpoint. If you've got a very light cation exchange capacity, let's say it's a single-digit cation exchange capacity, that tells me I can't hold that many nutrients out in my soil, and accordingly, if I'm going to raise big yields, I've got to apply nutrients a little bit at a time because my soil just can't hold it, especially when it comes to some of the nutrients that may leach. The ones I'm most concerned about would include nitrate, sulfate, and boron. Those are ones that move through the soil pretty fast. You could also say chloride would fall into that category. And if I'm putting those nutrients out, I can't put too much or I might lose them.
Darren mentioned nitrate, and that's the one that I really want you to focus on. Take your cation exchange capacity times 10, and that'll give you a rough idea of how much nitrogen your soil can hold at any one time. So let's just say, for example, that your cation exchange capacity is 8. 8 times 10 is 80 pounds of nitrogen you can hold. If you do your soil test and you find out you already have 20 pounds there, that means that we are going to tell you, I probably wouldn't put any more than 60 pounds out there at any one time right now. So when you look at cation exchange capacity, is it going to give you the exact amount of nitrogen your soil can hold? No, it's just going to get you close. But the whole point is this. We run into people all the time that say, oh, my ground's pretty heavy. Well, is your ground actually that heavy? Do you have that high a number of cation exchange capacity? Can you really hold that much nitrogen? As our yield goals continue to go up, we all know that we need to apply more nitrogen if we're going to have higher yields of corn and wheat and these types of crops. Okay, can your soil hold it in one shot? Do you have to make split applications? Do you have to maybe make 3 or 4 total applications because your ground is in effect so light? When you have a number, it's much easier to manage your farm and manage those nitrogen applications than if you're just believing, oh, my ground's heavy enough, it'll hold it.
The other two things that I look at with cation exchange capacity are water holding capacity. If we've got more organic matter, if we've got a higher CEC and more clay, we can hold more water, and that's going to come into play out in the field, of course, during the season. But the other one is herbicide. When we think about pre-emerge herbicides and their importance in agriculture today, it's just absolutely critical, whether you're talking about soybeans or really any crop. But when we're putting those herbicides out, if we've got a very light cation exchange capacity, we can often get by with a little lower rate. Or you can say, well, I'm probably not going to be able to hold that herbicide in my soil very long, so the activity may be a little shorter. So that's something to think about. If you've got a really heavy soil, you're going to take a higher rate of a pre-emerge herbicide because some of that's going to be tied up and held a little tightly to those clay particles.
Occasionally we will hear some people say, oh, you don't need to know your cation exchange capacity. That's not an important number. What are they talking about? This is one of the most important numbers you have to know. And here's the thing that I want you to think about. Around the world, farmers are very heavily regulated in most countries. We're lucky, even though you may think, oh, we're heavily regulated, we're really not. We don't have to submit a bunch of reports to the government before we start farming each year. But that could happen if we don't do a good job managing our farms. And one of the most important things that non-farmers are going to look at is nitrate in the water. If you don't know your cation exchange capacity, I'll just put it to you this way. I think you have a much greater chance of over-applying your nitrate, having more end up in the groundwater. And actually, you know, you think about this too, not only is that bad for the environment, that's bad for your pocketbook because you just lost a bunch of money. So please, when you get your soil test this fall, make sure you're testing for cation exchange capacity.
One other thing non-farmers might notice driving past your farm is our weed of the week. We hope they don't see it. We'll show you how to stop it coming up later in the show.
If you're looking to expand your farm's grain handling, you want everything to be fast and efficient. The Quick Belt from Norwood Sales is your all-around grain handling solution. Our conveyor-based system uses an 18-inch belt and a 10-inch tube, which minimizes seed damage while moving more than 10,000 bushels an hour. That's fast enough to fill a semi in 6 minutes. Plus, our hood is designed to gently direct the flow of grain straight down, keeping your crop in condition. Keep your grain and your farm moving with the Quick Belt from Norwood Sales.
And how about the big man, Pro Germinator?
Yeah, this guy's got some experience in the field. But look at his stats. You can't argue with those kind of results.
You're right. I know a lot of teams wishing their phosphorus player had those kind of numbers.
Right, but this guy's not just phosphorus. He's got the nitrogen, the potassium, the micros. All those just add up to his phosphorus game.
And his game is good.
No two seasons are the same. Each brings its own set of challenges, and you've seen a few. So many threats, and not one single thing can be taken for granted. In the fight against the unpredictable, the Acceleron portfolio provides coverage on 4 fronts: fungicides, insecticides, nematicides, and bioenhancers. Rise stronger with one simple decision.
With the success of the Case IH Steiger Quad Track and Magnum Road Track tractors, it's no secret why Case IH is the leader of the track. So it wasn't surprising when the competition started imitating us. Because Case IH offered the first 5-axle design to give you more power to the ground, with less berming and compaction, all to help you be more productive. Still, we're flattered. In fact, if we weren't already red, we'd be blushing.
At Estes Performance Concaves, we know how valuable your time is at harvest. That's why we designed the new XPR concave system. The XPR system is the #1 performance concave system on the market, surpassing the rest in both speed and efficiency, ensuring every last grain from your field gets into your tank. Plus, XPR concaves work for all row crops. No more changing concaves, meaning you have less downtime. Take back your bushels this harvest. Get Estes Performance Concaves in your combine today.
The Guardian Air Twin Spray Nozzle from Hypro produces a twin spray pattern with air-inducted droplets for superior coverage, even in dense canopies. Be effective and efficient with your spray application this season with the Guardian Air Twin. Hypro, helping you spray better.
Last week on the show, we talked about seed varieties and picking the right trait for your farm. Well, this week we want to talk a little bit more about genetics and defensive traits, because boy, that seed variety conversation, that's pretty emotional for a lot of people, and it is an important decision for the farm.
Well, certainly you want to have the right trait package, no question about that, but inside that trait package, the number one thing everybody's looking for is yield and profit. What am I going to make the most money on?
Right.
Okay, let's just take those two things and put them aside, because that's a given. You have to pick the right trait, you have to pick something that's going to make you money and make you yield. But now inside that, let's say we do have that and we've got several varieties, equal trait, equal profitability or yield potential. Now what are some of the other characteristics that we really want to see? So for us, when we're looking at things for our farm, we're really concerned about the defensive traits that we have to have on the farm. For example, in soybeans, white mold is a big disease that we see in the north. And that's something that we're going to choose for on our farm. In the south, that may be frog eye leaf spot. In corn, that may be gray leaf spot, or it may be northern corn leaf blight. The disease package that we get is one of those critical things, and I can say this from firsthand experience. If it's a disease we can control easily with one pass of fungicide, we're not worried about it, so we're going to do the fungicide anyway. But if it's something like Goss's wilt in corn, I can speak for Brian here a little bit. If you don't have Goss's tolerance, we just can't plant the hybrid.
Well, the whole thing is, Darren mentioned the right word there that I wanted to talk about. That's tolerance. And what you find in a lot of these seed guides is varieties that are resistant to certain diseases. Okay, well, when it comes to that tolerance, that means that there's still going to be some of that disease, but at least it's not as bad as maybe some of the other varieties out there. Okay, it's simply tolerant to the disease. Hopefully you're not going to lose a whole lot of yield. And this is one of the things where you really kind of have to trust the seed dealer, because it might not even be in the book, and you say, hey, I've got Goss's wilt, or I'm worried about bacterial leaf streak. With those two diseases, the very best thing you can do is pick the right variety. Well, if it's not listed, if they don't have resistance there, they're going to say, well, it's moderately tolerant. Well, how good is that compared to 3 other varieties? That's really what I need to know when I'm picking varieties.
So it's disease tolerance that you need that you can't necessarily control out in the field. Now, one other thing that is going to be different from hybrid to hybrid or variety to variety is what kind of root system it has and what kind of stalk it has. A lot of farmers will look at, well, the stalk is the big thing, and I got to have this great stalk because I don't want anything tipping over or green snapping or these kinds of things, and I agree with them. That is a really important trait, but you're probably not going to have a great stalk if you don't have a fairly decent root system underneath it feeding it. The roots are where you're bringing in nutrients from the soil. They're also bringing in water, and if we have a good transport system and a great feeder system of roots, we're typically going to have a decent plant health throughout the season.
Okay, the title of this topic was how we pick varieties on our farm, or something like that. So anyway, let me just put it to you this way. I don't really know what's going to win our plot this year. I don't know what's going to win out in our fields this year. Yes, I can look at yield data from last year and the year before, but let's face it, we're planting mostly new or newer varieties. There are very few older varieties still on the market because they get replaced so quickly now. The new genetics that keep coming out are so much better. We're excited about that. That's awesome. But here's my point. Last year's winner is almost for sure not going to be this year's winner. We just don't want you planting one variety on the farm, and for that matter, I don't only want you planting 2. Plant several. On our farm, this next year, for example, we're probably going to have 1,800 acres of corn. Okay, I want to plant at least 6 or 8 different varieties. Yes, at least 6 or 8 different varieties. That's no joke. I might pick something a little bit different in my continuous corn acres than my first year corn acres. I definitely am going to spread my maturity risk. We'll go all the way from probably 98 day up to 108 day, because I don't know what the year is going to bring. We also are believers in, hey, at least in some fields, you should be planting multiple varieties. The more you can spread your risk on the farm, the better off you are. So what I'm trying to say here is try to pick a package of hybrids with maybe a little bit diverse genetics that are going to give you, yes, the chance for top end yield, but at least we're not going to lose the farm because we planted only one variety and next year turns out to be the worst year ever for that variety.
Okay, last couple things that I'll mention. One would be grain quality. If you're looking for test weight or just excellent looking grain, for one reason or another, that could be a really important thing for your farm. I like test weight. That adds free yield in my opinion. So if I have all other things equal, I'll pick the one that has higher test weight. The other thing would be leaf orientation, especially if you're in narrow rows. You may choose something that's a little more upright leaf on corn or soybeans, really.
How about flexier, Darren?
Well, flexier could be something if you're in a low population situation that you say, well, I've got lighter soils or low rainfall, I want to plant a lower plant population, then I would look at a flexier. What I'm really curious about is what you're getting for yield per 1,000. So if you're planting 30,000 seeds, you should get at least 210 bushels, if not more. Maybe you should get up to 300 bushels. But I had a question from a farmer earlier this fall who said, hey, I'm getting about 5 to 6 bushels per 1,000. Do you think I should increase my plant population? And I said, absolutely not. On corn, you should be getting at least 7 bushels per 1,000, if not 10. So you've got other things that you need to work on first. So when it comes to selection, yeah, I like flexier. That's fine to take advantage of a good season and perhaps put on a bigger or longer ear, but you still have to get good fertility to make that thing happen. So when we're picking varieties, first of all, trait and yield, but then we start looking at the root and the stalk and grain quality and other defensive characteristics for diseases we can't control otherwise.
Well, if you want the best corn, yes, picking the right variety certainly helps. But what also helps is great weed control. We'll tell you how to stop our Weed of the Week coming up next.
The Weed of the Week is brought to you by Corteva Agriscience, Agriculture Division of Dow DuPont. Finish the fight against tough weeds with the Enlist Weed Control System.
Weeds are tough. But we're tougher. With unrivaled weed control, reduced drift, and near zero volatility. So, who's tough now?
Our Weed of the Week is Marsh Elder.
Well, it's interesting, Brian, that we're standing by this field because this is where I first saw Marsh Elder. It looks a lot like sunflower in terms of it has an erect stem. The stem is very smooth though, that's different than sunflower, but the leaves look kind of similar to sunflower leaves. Unfortunately, a lot of the herbicides that you may choose to control it work the same on Marsh Elder as they do on sunflower.
Yeah, and we're lucky. It's not like this weed is the toughest weed ever to control or anything. We just advise you, start with a good pre-emerge herbicide. The problem is, it's hard to find a great pre-emerge herbicide on any of these large seeded broadleaves because sometimes they can germinate deeper down in the soil. So what I would probably do is start in corn with Sharpen, wheat I'd start with Sharpen, in front of soybeans. You know, use the 3 pre program. Yes, it's not going to be fantastic on this particular weed, but it's going to be a good start.
One that you may switch up a little bit on soybeans is I like some Pursuit out there. You could do Authority Assist early if you wanted to, and then save your first rate for a post-emerge application.
That's true.
That would be a good 1-2 punch on Marsh Elder.
Yeah, usually I suggest waiting with that Pursuit until post-emerge, but certainly you could use it pre. Just keep that rate down if you're in the northern U.S. We worry about carryover.
So I already mentioned first rate post-emerge on soybeans. I would put that in combination with a Cobra or preferably a Flex Star if you could use that in your rotation. In wheat, I like Husky post-emerge. In corn, I like Status.
All right, well that's it for our Weed of the Week, Marsh Elder. But stay tuned, Iron Talk is coming up next.
Out here, great yield starts with great weed control. That's why I choose the Roundup Ready Extend crop system, the system that makes the difference, because only I know what it takes out here. Yield's what it's all for. But keeping my fields clean all season, that's what it's all about. This is my field.
Farmers across the country have put their confidence in the Roundup Ready Extend crop system. These are their experiences.
My satisfaction with XtendiMax on controlling weeds this is second to none.
We had fine results on the weed side, and we had excellent results on the yield side.
It's taking down the weeds, cleaning the fields up.
Our confidence is high.
There's no reason not to have XtendiMax on your fields. Put it on challenging acres, and they're clean.
Introducing the SoilMax ZD48, the newest addition to the SoilMax Gold Digger lineup. The first plow designed for smaller class tractors, the ZD48 has been tested on tractors weighing between 10,000 and 16,000 pounds with excellent results. Designed for row crop farms, vineyards, irrigation, and specialty crop farms. The SoilMax ZD48 will install tile up to 48 inches deep, as well as install 3 or 4-inch tile. The ZD48 truly opens up the world of tile installation to more farms than ever before.
Are you looking to make a career in an ag-related field? The Responsible Nutrient Management Foundation is pleased to offer a $2,500 scholarship for students enrolled in an agricultural program for the 2018-2019 school year. The goal with this scholarship is to further the education of students who understand the importance of proper stewardship and responsible nutrient management for agriculture and society as a whole. To learn more and apply, visit rnmf.org/scholarship before October 15th.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
With the success of the Case IH Steiger Quad Track and Magnum Road Track tractors, it's no secret why Case IH is the leader of the track. So it wasn't surprising when the competition started imitating us.
Because Case IH offered the first 5-axle design to give you more power to the ground, with less berming and compaction, all to help you be more productive.
Still, we're flattered. In fact, if we weren't already red, we'd be blushing.
Once again this year in soybeans, there was a great deal of stock lodging and what I would term as lazy or leaning plants all across the country. Today's Iron Talk will discuss one tool that helps harvest those beans more efficiently. Soybean lodging is caused generally by one or more of a number of factors, including high winds, excessive rains, genetic susceptibility, or interestingly enough, a fertility imbalance, most notably with low levels of potassium and high levels of nitrogen. Harvesting those soybeans that are leaning at a 45-degree angle or even more can be a serious challenge. Now, on our farm, we've been running air reels for years. The key advantage is getting soybeans to feed into the head evenly rather than bunching up. Farmers using these types of systems are able to thresh much more efficiently without loss at the head. As harvest gets rolling across the Midwest, here's one other huge benefit that you'll see with air reels and farms that are running them. You can get started earlier in the day, and you can often run later into the night. This became a noticeable advantage in areas where weather became a challenge last fall, and it's playing out at the beginning of this season as well. Of course, all these benefits of the air reel system are not dependent on having lodged soybeans. You'll see similar improvements in performance in any soybeans that you harvest, as well as other crops like wheat and lentils. If you've had trouble getting an even flow of material into your combine at harvest, or just getting harvest done as quickly as you'd like to, try out an air reel system. It might be the answer for you. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now, back to the show.
That's all the time we have for today's show, but before we go, we want to invite you to tune into the Ag PhD radio show. Ag PhD radio is on each weekday at 2 p.m. Central on Sirius XM channel 147.
And don't miss the next Ag PhD TV show. We'll have another Weed of the Week, Farm Basics, Iron Talk, and a whole lot more. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.